Hi guys, Miss Schneider here. And one of the things that you're going to have to do during each of your main speeches is have a visual aid. So in the slides that you're looking at right now, I talked about different ways that you can present your information, and that would be maybe a haiku deck. You definitely have access to Google Slides. You can use PowerPoint. I'm sure that you might know a bunch of different ways that you can do it. And I showed you an example of what a Prezi looks like. But no matter what you choose to use as your visual aid, what's going to be important is that it is effective. Your visual aid is not your speech. It is just an accompaniment to your speech. So it needs to be designed effectively. So I wanted to show you just a couple of tips here. I did not create this, so I'm going to skip over some of it. But there are 6 things or 5 things actually that you really want to think about as far as words are concerned. You want to be big. You want to stay consistent. You want your visual aid to be clear. You want it to be progressive, and you definitely want it to be simple. And then at the end, there's a summary of all of this information. So if you'd like to take any notes as we go along, this is pretty self-explanatory. You can always go back and watch the video, but you will be asked to do something at the end of this presentation. So it's up to you whether you want to keep notes on that or not. So the first thing is make it big. Mostly this is talking about text size. You have to be able to read it as an audience member. So you can see the 12-point font at the top is not easy to see. 36, 44 is where it starts being really easy to see. So it's pointing out that the stuff at the top is actually way too small. You need to make it easy for people to see from at least 6 feet away. So if you need something to guide you in looking at how big it is, then stand 6 feet away from your computer so that you can tell. The next point is to keep it simple. As far as text is concerned, you don't want to use too many colors. Just stick with a certain color scheme and stay with it. You want to stick with the same font the whole way through so that it's very, very simple. There is something called a 6x7 rule when you're creating a presentation, which is no more than 6 lines per slide and no more words than 7 per line. So keep that in mind, and it'll keep it easy for your audience to view. This is an example of something that's way too detailed from somebody's presentation. This one, on the other hand, excuse me, is very easy and simple to read. This is an example of a chart maybe you'd think about putting up on your informative speech. However, that's way too much information for somebody to look at when you could do something that's a little bit more simple and color-coded like this. This is a little bit too detailed, but you take away the background and it looks very nice and it's easy to view. You also want to keep your pictures simple. I know that a lot of you like to go in and put as many pictures in as possible, and you think that's going to make it an amazing presentation. But if your screen is covered like this, then that is too detailed. Same thing with sound effects. I know in the past that I have used presentations with sound effects, and some of them were so loud and frightening that I scared my audience. So you want to be careful if you do that and only use sound when it's absolutely necessary. You also have the ability to put transitions in your slide, but there are so many different possibilities like windmills and wipes, and sometimes animals come across the screen, but you just want to make it maybe a clear appear or disappear that's a subtle transition so that the audience is looking at you and not the presentation. So you saw that second click there was a clear or disappear. All right, so a couple other things when it comes to the font. Please don't write in all capital letters. That's difficult to read. You can tell the difference between the first and the second bullet there. The second bullet is upper and lowercase, and it's a lot easier to read. There are different fonts that you'll probably want to use, but you just want to keep it to the simple ones so that it's easy to read. So simple fonts are clearer. Don't put things in italics. You can put things in more normal font or bold. And you can use colors to emphasize if you want, but we'll get to how you pick those colors here in a minute. So you can use numbers so that people can see what's happening. If you're talking about something going in chronological order, this would come into play maybe when you're doing your demonstration speech and you're teaching somebody how to do something. You can also use bullets to show a list of things. And here's where that color comes back in. So when you use contrasting colors, that's going to be easiest for your audience to read. So you want to use light words on a dark background, such as this one. If you use a light background, then you're going to want to use dark colors for your fonts. So there's an example of the high contrast colors. And then you can see the ones that you can no longer really read. This is just another example here as far as a light background. You don't want to use yellow on a light background. You want to use something that's dark so that it pops out. And again, you don't want to use these colors that do not complement one another. Size clearly shows when something is important. So if you have a big picture of something, it's going to imply that we should be looking at that and that it's important. You can also use focal points to direct people's attention. See how the arrow moved there? Don't want to put the arrow over on this side because that wouldn't make any sense. A lot of you like to make backgrounds that are the whole picture. And I get that that seems very, very, very interesting. However, now you can see how hard it is to read the text for your presentation. So this is too busy when this is probably a better option because now I can read the text and see the picture both at the same time. So I'm going to skip ahead here just for a second. If you want to use animation, they're talking about using progressive animation so that as you are speaking, if you click the button, you would be able to go forward with not everything on the screen at once. Same thing with this one. So this is too many terms here on one page, but if you show the picture and then things show up one by one, they are easier for you to see. So you want to be consistent the whole way throughout your PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to make sure something stands out, you could make something a different color. If you change the color of the font, that would also imply that something is important there. You could use animations to do that as well. So this is just a summary of what we went over. You want things to be big. That would be your font, some of your pictures. Make sure that people can see them from about 6 feet away. You want things to be simple. You might want to put a lot on it to make it look like you've done a ton of work, but you want it to be simple so that people are able to follow what you're doing. You want it to be clear. You want it to go in order. So if you're using animations or charts or things like that, use the progressive format and then keep everything consistent throughout your PowerPoint or Haiku deck or Google Slides or whatever it is that you're using. I do encourage you to go online and see which ones work best for you. Just remember that communication is the key. You're using the text to support your communication. So it's not as important as your actual speech. Pictures can help people visualize things or simplify something that is complex. Animations can be used to show that progressiveness again, or for complex relationships. Visuals are supposed to support, not distract. I can remember taking speech in college and one of my professors talking to a young man in my class who had passed around a dirty gym sock during his presentation to prove a point. But what ended up happening is that none of us were paying attention to the speech. We were just worried about handling the dirty gym sock. So just keep that in mind as a way to remember that you want your visuals to support you, not distract you. Your people should be listening to you, and only use sounds when absolutely necessary. So that's it. You're going to go on to the next slide and do the activity that's based on making effective visual presentations. Thanks.